Picture this. A teenager scores a perfect SAT. His IQ is later measured between 195 and 210, by some accounts the highest ever recorded. 40 years later, you can find him on a horse ranch in rural Missouri. His name is Christopher Langan, and here's the part that should stop you cold. He didn't fail because he lacked opportunity. He was offered a scholarship to the University of Chicago, but he turned it down. Instead, he enrolled somewhere else, decided he understood the material better than his professors did, and dropped out. For the next 4 decades, he built an entire theory of the universe in his spare time. He calls it the CTMU. Almost no physicist takes it seriously. In Langan's response to that silence, he convinced himself they're the ones missing something. Now here's what's strange. This isn't a rare story. History is full of brilliant minds making decisions that an average person would have caught in seconds. Physicists falling for obvious scams, Nobel laureates losing fortunes in the market, geniuses who couldn't hold a single relationship or career together. But why? Shouldn't intelligent people be making better decisions than average people? The more you look at this pattern, the more it should worry you. Intelligence, the very thing we're told will save us, might actually be setting a trap. Not for average people. For smart people specifically. Possibly for you. High intelligence without the right foundation doesn't just fail to help you, it actively works against you. And yes, we're coming back to Langan because his story is about to explain something most people never figure out their entire life. What do you think is the #1 predictor of good decision-making? Most people say intelligence. Smarter brain, better decisions. Feels obvious, right? It's wrong. In the early 1990s, a cognitive scientist named Keith Stanovich found something that genuinely unsettled the academic world. He discovered that IQ and rational real-world thinking are almost completely separate things. He gave it a name, dysrationalia, the condition of having a high IQ while being remarkably bad at thinking clearly about your actual life. Think about that for a second, because this isn't really about Stanovich's research subjects. It's about you, the next time you're certain you've made the smart choice. So why would intelligence work against someone? Here's where the answer gets uncomfortable. Smart people are exceptionally good at one specific skill: building arguments, constructing detailed, logical, convincing cases for whatever they already believe. The problem is that skill doesn't care if the belief is true. It defends bad ideas just as well as good ones. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning, and intelligence doesn't reduce it. It amplifies it. The smarter you are, the better you are at convincing yourself you're right, even when you're completely wrong. This is the same trap from the intro, just with a name attached. And it's about to get a face. Isaac Newton, the man who invented calculus, defined the laws of motion, and explained gravity itself. Arguably the greatest scientific mind in human history. In 1720, Newton invested heavily in the South Sea Company, one of the most obvious financial bubbles in history. People with a fraction of his intelligence were already pulling their money out and warning their friends. Newton didn't just stay in, he doubled down. He lost a fortune. In today's money, several $1,000,000. He's said to have remarked afterward, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." Even Newton, the most rigorous mind of his century, couldn't see the trap he was standing in. The trap has a name. Psychologists call it the intelligence trap. And once you know it, you'll catch yourself walking into it. Here's how it works. Every human brain has a built-in tendency to seek out information that confirms what it already believes. You've probably heard this called confirmation bias. In other words, a smarter brain doesn't build a smaller wall. It builds a better defended one, the kind you can't see from the inside. Now add motivated reasoning to that. The ability to construct a sophisticated argument for whatever you already believe. What you get is a person who is, at the same time, just as biased as average, much better at hiding it from themselves, and far more convincing when defending it to other people. That's not a superpower. That's a cage with a really nice paint job. In 2006, researchers at Emory University, led by psychologist Drew Weston, scanned the brains of committed political partisans while they evaluated information that threatened their own side's position. The reasoning centers of the brain barely lit up. The emotional centers, the ones tied to defending against threat, did. Their brains weren't working to evaluate the new information. They were working to make it go away. Think of the last disagreement you refused to back down from. Were you actually weighing their point or just reloading? Most people, smart people especially, are doing the second one and calling it the first. This is why brilliant people stay in bad relationships far longer than they should. Why highly educated people fall for sophisticated scams. Why experts in one field consistently overestimate their judgment in a completely different one. They're not thinking less. They're thinking hard, just pointed in the wrong direction, in defense of a conclusion they reached before the thinking even started. And this is exactly what Langan did. He once described his work as having broken new ground that, by his own account, the rest of the academic world simply hasn't caught up to yet. To him, the silence from physicists and philosophers isn't evidence that something's wrong with his theory. It's evidence that everyone else is behind. So here's the real question this video has been building toward. If raw intelligence can't protect you from any of this, if it can actually make it worse, what does protect you? In the 1930s, a teenager dropped out of school at 15. Nobody flagged him as gifted. No standout test scores, no early signs of brilliance. Just an ordinary kid by every visible measure. What he had instead was an obsession with watching his own thinking, catching himself in the act of being wrong, and treating that as useful information instead of an attack. His name was Charlie Munger. He'd go on to become one of the most respected decision-makers in modern business history, building Berkshire Hathaway alongside Warren Buffett, not on raw IQ, but on what he called mental models. At Berkshire's shareholder meetings, while other people confidently offered an opinion on everything, Munger would often simply say, "I have nothing to add," not because he had nothing to offer, because he'd trained himself to recognize the exact moment he didn't know enough to speak. That single habit, knowing the edges of your own knowledge, is something most intelligent people never build. Because intelligence whispers a very seductive lie. You already know enough. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you said "I don't know" out loud in a conversation instead of guessing confidently and hoping you were right? If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone. That's the habit almost nobody has, and it's exactly the one that separates Munger from Langan. So what's the actual secret of making right decisions? Not IQ, not credentials, not raw talent. Intellectual humility. The ability to hold your own beliefs loosely. To genuinely entertain the possibility that you're wrong. To update when new evidence shows up, instead of immediately building a case against it. And here's the uncomfortable part. Intellectual humility is actually harder for smart people to build, because every time they've trusted their own intelligence in the past, it worked. Good grades, won arguments, impressed the room. Their brain learned one lesson over and over. Trust yourself, you're usually right. That lesson, repeated enough times, becomes the trap. So next time you catch yourself feeling absolutely certain about something, certain enough that you've quietly stopped listening to the other side, pause and ask one honest question. Am I actually thinking right now, or am I just defending? The smartest people in history weren't undone by what they didn't know. They were undone by total confidence in what they thought they knew. Newton lost a fortune believing he understood the market. Napoleon ignored his generals at key moments because he believed he understood war better than they did. Langan had one of the highest recorded IQs in history, yet never came close to the success many expected. Not because the talent wasn't there, but because of the absence of the ability to ask whether he might be wrong. And somewhere right now, a brilliant person, maybe watching this video, is making a costly decision and building a flawless argument for why it's actually the smart move. Intelligence is a tool. And like any tool in the wrong hands, even your own, it can do real damage. The goal was never to be the smartest person in the room. The goal is to know exactly what your intelligence can't do for you. That's it for today. If this changed how you think about how you think, that's exactly the point. See you in the next one.